Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am the host Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished professional talking to us today from Toulouse in France, Katja Rehse. Katja, welcome to the show.
Hello, Ashutosh. Thanks for having me. I'm
Thank
really happy to be with you on the show.
Thank you. Katja is a holistic business and life coach, and she's the founder and CEO of KEMHealing. So, Katja, before we get into holistic business and coaching, tell me about your own journey in brief.
Okay, so for more than 30 years, I was in the industry and I was a leader in different sectors, semiconductors, automotive, and aeronautics, in the supply chain management, in the technical support, and also in customer service. I managed multinational cross-functional teams, dealt with customers all over the world of different nationalities and cultures and so forth. And at that time, I was a paradox. I was really at ease and confident in my role as a leader. So no problem for me to talk to CEOs and top managers of the customers and so on. And I think important to say, not a problem to be a female leader in a male-dominant environment, which is not always obvious.
Yeah.
And but at that time, my self-awareness was not really developed. And I was, in fact, leading self-confidence internally, but I didn't see it and I didn't want to see it. So hence, I was not conscious about the fact that what I call today my untackled emotional wounds were, in fact, dysregulating my emotions. And even if I managed to not let it out, sometimes I didn't. And so I got trapped by these emotions at work. I was perfectionist, I was overreacting and oversensitive. And when that happened, okay, I arranged the situation, but I carried all that home with me, and it was really impacting my life because I was turning in circles, my thoughts, why did I do this and again and so forth. Maybe you know that. And so to cut a long story short, one day I realized I don't want that anymore. I want to get out of these dynamics. And above all, I want to understand, why am I like that? So I started to educate myself, mainly in the UK, in different areas, personal development, holistic approaches, but also in spiritual healing and mediumship, which is kind of interesting, I think. Because in fact, for me, given how I am, it was not an option for me to go to a psychologist. So I really wanted to try something else out that really fitted to me. So I started the journey, and all this helped me a lot. And I was really intrigued about the efficiency and the long-lasting results for me personally. And that's why I started to learn for myself, because at that time already I thought, would be good if I can help myself, people. And so given the fact that I'm someone who really needs to be in sync with what I'm doing, I need to see a sense. When I started to feel I want to do something else, I said, okay, I'm going to change. I've always functioned like that. When I was like that, I was waking up, well, I changed company, I changed job, and so forth. And this time I changed my life. So I did a 360 turn. So today, as you said, I'm a holistic healing coach for business purposes, but also private purposes. And given my personal story, I specialized in the regulation of emotion, in the healing and prevention of the negative impacts on all levels, physical, mental, emotional, and so forth, and also in the tackling and addressing of the root causes, because the latter is extremely important when it comes to regulated emotion in order to have a long-lasting result. So this is what I'm doing today.
Fantastic, fantastic. And you seem to have found your passion now.
Yes.
But fantastic. But my question to you, Katja, is that what does emotional governance mean, and why is it so critical in today's business environment?
In fact, emotional governance, I really prefer to call it, Ashutosh, emotional regulation.
Okay.
And this is part of our emotional intelligence, the so-called EQ. And emotional intelligence, we can really describe it in a nutshell, is our ability to consciously use the power of our emotions, right? And it is the baseline for that emotional regulation, which is our capacity to, let's say, internally respond to our emotions and to externally act and react in a, let's say, adequate way. So I always say it's finding the right doses of the right emotion in front of the right people at the right moment. So emotional intelligence can be learned and emotional regulation can be learned, but only to a certain extent. And I will explain myself. Because if you suffer from real unregulated emotions like myself, we need to address the root causes, which can be conscious or unconscious, because if you don't do this, you will never manage to be aligned with yourself.
Right.
We'll just learn how to hide them, how to oppress them. And you will, like I did, bend yourself in order to, let's say, fit into an expected emotional intelligent behavior at work. So you tick the box, but you're not aligned. And the root causes will continue to work behind the scene and negatively impact you. And this is why it's so important. So why is emotional governance or regulation so important in business? Because times are more or less, and luckily, over where we are asked or were asked, your emotions have nothing to do in business. Leave them at the door, especially when it comes to leadership. So since the 90s, the business environment has more or less understood, let's say, the importance of emotions also in leadership. And therefore, we know today how impacting they are. So emotions are the root of innovation, of commitment, but also of decision-taking. They're really key for progress on an individual side, but also as a team and as an organization. And they are not only essential for business, but also for business development, because they really impact on customer satisfaction in the customer service area. They're important in business negotiation, internally and externally, and also on human relational aspects, employee, employer, and manager-employee relationship. And also they are key in employee retention.
Right.
And the last important point is also they are so contagious. And therefore, they have a huge impact on, in fact, how teams and organizations function together. So even if we are not there yet, emotional intelligence, as I said, has really gotten the focus since the 90s. And therefore, the understanding, let's say, has grown that, in fact, our capacity, or if we are able to feel, recognize, and openly show our emotions, this is part of our emotional intelligence.
Fantastic.
But
Great
the key
response.
is doses, and that's why emotional regulation is so important here.
What a great response. Thank you. And Katja, what are some common emotional and spiritual challenges that leaders could face, and how can these challenges be overcome?
In fact, on the emotional side, for me, there are mainly two. First, it's really a general one, the acceptance and let's say the readiness of your direct business environment. Because even if EQ has made its way, we're not there yet. And I think here we have really cultural differences, because in my view, in Europe, for example, we are really behind the USA, and I think India too, when it comes to emotional intelligence, not even thinking about spiritual intelligence. We will talk about that maybe later. So in Europe, unfortunately, there are still so many leaders that fear to be seen as weak, vulnerable, and criticizable when they show their emotions. And so they lock them away, and all of them. And this has impacts, as we have not seen yet, but well, maybe we'll talk about that. But this has impacts personally, but also on the teams and the organization. And then the second emotional challenge is really regarding the regulation of positive emotions. Because in the professional environment, the focus lies on the negative emotions, and therefore the down-regulation of impulsiveness, anxiety, fears, and so forth, which is logic. And we all understand that. But emotional regulation is more than that. It's about positive emotions too, which is most often neglected. And here, many leaders struggle because they are not conscious about, and they're not focused on showing positive emotions and their sign, smiles, active listening. And however, all this is key. And we also forget how important positive emotions are when they're openly shown in conflict management, in developing creativity, in encouragement and motivation, and how contagious they are. So leaders shown emotions, as I always say, really decide if it's rainy or sunny in a room, in a team, or in an organization. quickly on the spiritual challenges, also there are two for me. The first one is really the understanding what is spirituality. And again, here comes in the cultural environment. Because in Europe, for example, spirituality is often really misunderstood. There are many misbeliefs, and it's mixed up with religion and esotericism, and it has nothing to do with it.
Correct.
You can be spiritual without being religious and esoteric, like in my case. So as I always say, and that's why people get nervous, let's say, in Europe when you're talking about bringing spirituality to the workplace, because they're thinking about that, oh, weird, bizarre, and religion and so forth. So maybe to those who are listening to us, just very shortly, for me, what spirituality is, like I always say, it's really adding to the measurable and material, just our thoughts, emotions, and above all, our sensibility. And our sensibility gives us access to our sixth sense, and our sixth sense gives us access to our intuition. And like that, we have access to knowledge and information we will not have access to otherwise. And also very important, it gives us access to the awareness that in fact we have so many unused capacities in us that are just asking to awaken. Like, for example, the ability to exchange with all organisms in our dimension. Everything is energy. We are energy. We exchange thanks to energy, and we are surrounded by energy. And it's important to understand that we can use that energy in our work, for our emotions, and so forth. And that's what I'm doing. And then very quickly, the second spiritual challenge is, especially for leaders, learn and practice spirituality, because a leader by definition is not somebody who sits still, who listens all the time. He runs around, he's in the driver's seat. So for many leaders, there may be a challenge to learn mindfulness, to learn reflectiveness and stillness, because it's not easy to sit still, listen to your body. What does it tell me? What do I want if you're not used to it? So especially for leaders, this may be a challenge. And we live in a fast-moving world where we are not pausing anymore. We don't contemplate. We don't sit in the stillness. So it's really challenging for them in order to do this. But as I always say, as a leader, you need to keep in mind the key principle. Leading starts with self-leading. So it's better that you learn it.
Great response. And what role does self-confidence play in emotional balance, and how can individuals build this?
Self-confidence is really a big topic for itself. So I will give you just some inputs here. Self-confidence is really the key in emotional balance, okay? Because it's the condition, in fact, for that feeling of inner security that allows us to walk through life with assurance and balance. Without self-confidence, we cannot be emotionally balanced, neither in the job nor in our personal life. And behind, most often, hides a negative self-image, and mainly two fears: the fear of being rejected and the fear of failure. We're not convinced about our capacities. We are all drowned all the time in self-doubt and in over-exaggerated self-critique, which makes our daily life just difficult or unviable. But the good news are, there are things we can do about it. Because what is really important to understand concerning self-confidence, it is mostly learned. Because our childhood experiences and imprints are far more decisive, in fact, in the creation of our self-confidence than our genes. And thanks to positive experiences, we can really disprove our negative belief systems, and we can get rid of thought patterns and so forth, which are blocking and limiting us. And what is really key also is that, let's call it, our success in life is mostly the result of our thinking. And it's like Buddha already said, we are what we think. All that we are arises from our thoughts, and with our thoughts we make the world. And it's exactly like this. The power of our thinking creates our reality. And this reality can be changed if we change our thinking. And it's the same with self-confidence. So we can learn that. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a long process, or more or less long, depending on yourself. But we can do that, and we can trigger changes. And so I've published, just for your information, on LinkedIn 10 days ago, a carousel on quick tips on what you can do every day in your life to boost your self-confidence. Because there are many things we can do we just forget about. So let me just give you some example. For example, we can learn to face our fears because, again, our fears are as big as we think we are. We can also learn how to leave our comfort zone. And all this will prove us through positive experiences that nothing is as big or as scaring as we thought it was, okay? And we can also learn how to make that inner critique shut up. That is that little voice that is always telling us, oh, don't do this, don't do that. Because the only objective that it has is to make us small and keep us small. And last example, very trivial thing, the so-called power body postures, let's say. Very easy. Keep your head up, your shoulders straight, because only this makes you feel stronger, taller, and you will send out complete different signs to the outside world. So if you want to know more, check out my post.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, Katja, when I was reading and preparing for my conversation with you, I was fascinated to read about your all-in-one method, which makes it, which is a unique method to address physical, mental, and emotional aspects simultaneously. Tell me more about your all-in-one method.
Okay, my all-in-one method, in fact, is unique, let's say, on 3 levels. First, it is complete and provide long-lasting results. I will explain here shortly why. Second, of course, I do it in presence, but it works at distance, wherever you are in the world. And I will go into that also quickly. And the third one is it shows quick results. So concerning the completeness and the long-lasting results, all-in-one addresses the 3 necessary levels. Becoming aware of unregulated emotions and concretely regulate them, logic. Addressing and healing already existing impacts. And here I have specialized on the physical side on back pain, joint, muscle, and tendon pain. So very often you do not find a medical explanation for because the emotions are behind. And on the mental side, identifying and working on uneasiness, global uneasiness, and unhappiness. And then the third level is identifying and tackling the root causes. I've already stressed it, our emotional wounds, because many, many methods leave the root causes aside. So you may get rid of the symptom. Your back pain may disappear or diminish, but it will come back at a later stage, or the issue will manifest through another symptom. So all-in-one addresses all this at the same time, because when the root cause is gone, your symptom has no longer any reason of being. So the second uniqueness is concerning the distance, because wherever you are in the world, I can work with you. My clients are next to Toulouse or in a different region or in a different country, because in presence or at distance really show the same results, despite what people may think or say. As well, energetic spiritual healing as coaching and counseling methods have no geographical border. So everything's energy, I already said that. And we are all interconnected. That's why I do not need my customers or clients to be with me in the room with me. And when it comes to the healing aspect, the spiritual healing, I do not even need you to be on the phone or via Zoom with me, because I will do what is called absent healing while you're sleeping in India or while you're doing your jogging in the USA. And then the third uniqueness is it shows quick results. To give you an idea, even if it depends on any case, all-in-one shows the result within 2 months, based on 1 session per week, let's say. So all this makes that it's a timely and long-lasting efficiency, which is also at distance. So for me, all-in-one is really perfect for people who do not have much time, for people who do not want to spend months in therapy. But here I just need to finish on that item, a very important point. I will never, ever replace traditional medicine when it comes to the healing aspect. When you need traditional medicine, I will always be in the support function. That is very important, because otherwise I would not be serious, because I'm not a doctor.
Very well said. You also advocate for the integration of spirituality in the business world. What do you mean by this, and how does spirituality improve leadership?
Okay, we have talked shortly about emotional intelligence, which is about respect, fair treatment, and regulated emotions at work. But this is not enough in order to know how to respect dignity, develop authenticity, and also allow people to unfold all their potential and make them see the sense and purpose of their work. So when it comes to spirituality and leadership, there are 2 steps. Okay, just remember what I said, nothing to do with religion. Okay, so the first step is about you as the person, as the leader. So first, it's about your personal journey. So it's about adopting an attitude for yourself based on mindfulness, humility, very important, self-finding, self-care, self-respect, and also a highly developed intuition. So it's about your personal purpose. And then comes the second step, where you apply these, let's say, spiritual values to your leadership style to create a working environment for your teams of trust, confidence, empathy, ethic, and success. And here, very important, we move away from the individual success because all is about now collectivity. It's about the collective success. So to be concrete, as a spiritual intelligent leader, you will foster open communication and active listening. You will create meaningful work and also integrate the teams, which is very important in the vision, in the goals, in the objective of the company.
Right.
So the principle of knowledge is power has not its place anymore. Okay. So you will work on your mindfulness and empathy towards your team, but you will also foster that your teams will apply the same things. And you will also invest in the development of your team.
Right.
Because the goal is to make everybody thrive. The individual is not the priority anymore. And you will also push for innovation and creativity, which also means you allow people to make mistakes, because without failure, we cannot progress.
Right.
And also a last point, which is extremely important, is you will understand, accept, and deal with and value diversity. We are all different. If we are clones, we don't progress. So spiritual intelligent leadership is also, you value now the difference. And then for you personally, I mentioned it shortly, you will automatically develop your intuition, which is key in business on two levels. First, on the human relational level. Now you add to your emotional intelligence the spiritual intelligence, and this will allow you to better do conflict management and to take better decisions with your team members, because with your highly developed intuition, you will detect how does the person feel that you have in front of you? What does she needs to hear? What are the right words that you have to adopt in the specific situation? And as I mentioned, I'm not going to repeat myself, difference is going to be a strength, and you will be able not to consider it as a value. And then the second item is your decision-taking in business. Thanks to your intuition, your increased awareness and sensitivity, you will be able to take better decisions. What is interesting, Ashutosh, is that in fact studies have confirmed that many successful leaders always mention luck, hazard, or opportunity sensing as an important factor in their success and their career. And you will able to do the same. And also, given the fact that you are aligned, you are centered, you will be able to manage, accept, and engage in, let's say, crisis situations of big change with a higher resilience and optimism, and let's say with a lot more wisdom.
Amazing. So I have time only for one quick question for you. And this is a question for so many young people who will listen to our conversation. What advice would you give to young leaders who are starting to feel out of sync with their professional roles?
First thing is really don't accept that feeling. Find out why you feel that. So don't wear a mask, don't remain unaligned with yourself. So get on the move to realign yourself. And this starts with the right question and honest questions to yourself. You need to identify, in fact, your real values. What's important for you in your life, in your job? What's your purpose? What makes you tick? What's great? What's great today? What is missing? And a very important question too, does it worth to have a great career, good money, if you feel empty and unfulfilled? And then you really need to give yourself the right answers to this. Does your life, your situation, your job respond to that today? And then the second step is you need to work on your self-awareness. You need to know yourself as best as you can. Well, you need to find out, and there's a technique. If you're interested, just get in contact with me. You need to understand, how do you feel in which situation? What are the triggers of your feelings? What type of person are you also? Are you a big bang person or a step-by-step person? You need to try to identify what is it really that gives you that feeling? Is it your job? Is it your position, or is it something else? And once you have done, let's say, that assessment, according to the result in your personality, identify what you can do and how. Don't make a radical shift like I did if that's not your personality. If you're more a step-by-step person, think of an approach. How can I do step-by-step in order to create in accordance with my real values, in order to align yourself? So don't make that radical shift. And also, don't let your fears of the unknown really completely paralyze you. Just remember what we said. Our fears are as big as we think we are. So create that step-by-step action according to your identified values, because the only objective has to be allow yourself to be you. So this is what I would say.
Well said. And on that note, Katja, and your amazing pieces of advice, don't accept fear, identify your purpose and your values. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey.
Thank you.
What an amazing transition from 30 years in industry to becoming a holistic business and life coach. Thank you for speaking to me about emotional regulation. We also spoke about common emotional and spiritual challenges we face. Thank you for addressing the challenge of self-confidence. I loved your all-in-one method to address physical, mental, and emotional aspects simultaneously. And thank you also for speaking to me about spirituality. Thank you
Thank you
again,
so
and
much.
good luck. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye, Ashutosh.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.